Hey guys, Triple B here. We've just concluded the 4th week of the Budget Build Battle Tournament over on Limitless. If you're unfamiliar with it, it is a single prize focused format, so no rule box cards. That means EXs, Vs, Radiants, and A-Specs, none of that nonsense. Get them out of here. It's all about the single prize cards. There's also a slight limitation to the deck building process, as you can only have 2 copies of a card that have the same name. Exceptions being Basic Energy, which you can have as many as you'd like, and Basic Pokemon. If it evolves into a Stage 1, you can have 1 extra copy of it in your deck, well, the Basic in your deck, and if it evolves into a Stage 2, you can have 2 extra copies of the Basic, just to help out with consistency, so we're not seeing big Basics kind of dominating the format. All that aside though, let's get into the top 8 deck lists from this week. So, the first one being in 8th place was played by Dudsta. He brought an Ancient Box deck over. Having Liepard just kind of as a draw engine, so trade, you can discard a card, then draw into 2 things. You want to be getting as many ancient cards into the discard pile as possible to scale up Roaring Moon's attack, Venging Fletchling. It does a 70 base damage, then 10 more damage for each ancient card in your discard pile. So Liepard just helping you draw and charging up your Roaring Moon. As you are a Dark type, you can use Dark Patch to quickly get this online, attach return, Dark Patch, and since you're an ancient Pokemon, you can be using Professor Sada's Vitality, attaching an energy to potentially 2 of your different ancient Pokemon in play, then drawing it into 3 cards to get this online fast, as well as helping set up your other attacking options like Koraidon, Fluttermane, Sandy Shocks, and even a Raging Bolt showing up in the list. So it's Thunder Burst Storm Attack, lets you do 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for every energy attached to this. So just by charging it up and having enough to use the attack, you can be sniping something for 60, taking out pre-evolutions before they get online and become a threat, or just ramping up additional energy to try and take out larger targets if you'd like. Also seeing 1 copy of Great Tusk in here just for the land collapse attack. If you're seeing your opponents dug through their deck pretty aggressively, you can potentially just mill them out for the game. So honestly, I love seeing this deck, and congrats on making the top 8 this week, Dudsta. The rest of the cards in here I feel like kind of speak for themselves, but if you have any questions, ask in the comments down below. In 7th place, we're seeing Manuel, who brought a Galvantula Torterra list. So Torterra, I feel like we see it in the top 8 pretty much every week. You're probably very familiar with it. Having Evo Press, 50 damage for each of your evolution Pokemon in play. Fill your board with evolution guys, and you're doing 300 damage. Grotle in here, just letting you search your deck for a grass Pokemon, put it into your hand, helps you set up your evolution pieces, get your basics online, and just get going. The Beautifly evolution line in here for your draw power. They're all grass Pokemon, so you can search them out with the Grotle, then once per turn, draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. And the Galvantula, we did kind of gloss over at the start, but having the ability Compound Eyes lets you do 50 more damage into a Pokemon. Apologies, kind of got my tongue caught up here. Just doing the top 8 roundup after streaming, and it's pretty late. But Compound Eyes, you're going to do 50 more damage into your opponent's active Pokemon that has an ability. Its attack, Shocking Web, does a base of 50, so if you're hitting something with ability, theoretically hitting them for 100, but if you have a Lightning Energy on here, doing 80 more damage, so getting up to 180, it's a nice number to hit. Gengar's in here just to get it back from the discard pile and onto the bench to scale up your Torterra's damage. No Psychic Energy in here means it's not an attacker, it's just to kind of quickly ramp up damage, or when something gets knocked out, you can recover this just to get you back up to those breakpoint numbers. Rest of the deck though, also pretty standard staple cards for the format, things like Airzu to find your evolutions, Arven to get into items, and tool cards to get set up. Grab yourself an Evo Press, or not Evo Press, Evolution TM can get you into a Grotle as early as turn 1. Have one of these in the active, get Grotles on your bench, then use Grotle's Sundrenched Shell. Theoretically, you got a Torterra online as early as turn 2 that can start attacking. Iono, Gardenia's Vigor just for some energy acceleration, and Voss's Orders just being that solid Gust card. In 6th place, that's me. Ran a deck kind of in line with the Halloween season. Want to have some scary stuff in here. We've got the Dusknoir line. Getting some ghosts in there. There's some pretty spooky shenanigans. Knock them out, put damage counters. Dusknoir putting out 13, Dusclops putting out 5. Help set up some numbers and just get some damage counters onto your opponent's bench. Hawlucha also, when you bench it, you put 2 pings onto 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Emolga in here for a little bit of spread. Skywave, 10 damage to the active and to every other Pokemon in play, yours and your opponent's. Absol, 1 Dark Energy does 10 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon, and then Yveltal in here putting 2 damage counters onto each of your opponent's Pokemon that already has damage counters on it. So if your opponent has something like Manaphy in play, you want to be using Hawluchas to put out pings, and then Yveltal to just start taking them apart. Other nice thing about if they have Manaphy is just like, well, Dusclops put 5 damage counters on them, Yveltal can finish it off, then the following turn you can start attacking with Absol to just kind of spread to their bench, then just go back into Yveltal and start spreading a bit more aggressively into their bench. Monkey Dory being in here means you can be attaching a dark energy to it, and if your opponent's not taking one-shots into you, you can start handing off damage counters to them, and we are also running Gapejaw Bog just as another way to get damage output onto our opponent's board so that Yveltal can just start pinging them immediately. Means that when we're benching things we're taking damage to, Monkey Dory can be handing that off to them. For some bench protection though, including Manaphy and Jirachi just to help out. Spread's obviously a pretty scary thing in this format, as we're seeing in this very deck. And then the rest of the cards I feel like kind of speak for themselves. It did include one copy of Jamming Tower just to help out into decks that run Luxurious Cape, just because as they have a lot more HP with that attached, we want a way to kind of get through that, right? Like if Yveltal and Absol are having to deal with a Torterra theoretically that has 290 HP, they're going to struggle. So having a way to just kind of get past that is really helpful, as well as Lost Vacuum to help out with that situation. But Devolution TM is also another great piece to have. Can't obviously use these two together though. So like if you're worried about a Luxurious Cape, don't go Jamming Tower, then try and Devo them. In 5th place, we are seeing Lazy Snorlax with a very interesting Lost Box concept. We've seen this kind of floating around before, but hasn't showed up for a few weeks, so very interesting to see someone revisiting it. Has the Dusknoir line in here as well, doing the same thing as we saw in the previous deck, Comfy just for flower selecting to get your cards into the Lost Zone. See 2 cards, one to hand, one to the Lost Zone, and then you're quickly getting your other engines online. So Cramorant having Lost Provisions. If you have 4 cards in the Lost Zone, you're going to ignore all effects or all energy of the attack cost on here. So Spit innocently, theoretically attacking for free. Apologies, we are streaming live on Twitch and sounds like I've been raided. So just want to see who we've got coming over to the channel. Got Miss Jelly coming in. Hey, Miss Jelly, how'd your stream go tonight? Apologies, we're just kind of recording the top 8 video for right now, so I'm not keeping up too much with chat at this very second, but we'll pop in and say hey in a minute. Yeah, so you've got your Cramorant just for some pretty solid early game attack damage. Sableye to close it out in the late game with Lost Mine, putting 12 damage counters onto your opponent's board in any way that you'd like. So combining that with things like Dusclops and Dusknoir, you can take out some pretty threatening targets. Also just cleaning up knockouts that Cramorant might have set up, or going vice versa, you could set up damage for Cramorant to then finish them off afterwards. Kyurem also showing up in here. Its Plasma Bane ability makes it so if your opponent has any cards that say Chorus in their discard pile, you can use Trifrost for 1 colorless energy. You're going to do 110 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon when you use that. So yeah, if you ever see a Chorus go into your opponent's bench and they don't have a Manaphy in play, you're about to have a lot of fun. They're not, but you are. So yeah, very solid list. We are seeing 2 copies of Lost City in here as well. So as you're knocking out your Dusknoirs and Dusclops to put out some damage counters, they're also going in the Lost Zone. That's going to be charging up the amount of cards in there to get your Sableye and your Cramorant's effects online very quickly. Does also mean if you gusted up something like your opponent's Manaphy, use Boss's Orders, knock them out with Cramorant while Lost City's in play, they can't bring that back. Then you try and get an attack off with Kyurem. Yeah, good times. In 4th place, we are seeing Sneaky Old Crab, and I've got to say, anytime I've seen Old Crab make it into the top 8, he's got Dodrio in this list, so I think he might have a sneaky favorite Pokemon, and I don't think it's a crab. But Dodrio having Zooming Draw, put a damage counter on this, draw a card, combining amazingly with the Ballistic Beak attack, doing a base damage of 10, but then 30 more damage for every damage counter you have on this. So just draw through cards and then make it potentially into a great attacker, only needing 1 energy. The other attacking options in here though, you did use the Incineroar, which has Secret Attack, 1 fire energy. You choose an attack from one of your previous evolutions and just use it for this. Just pretty cool. You have access to Torracat, who can use Flare Strike, 80 damage. During your next turn, this can't use Flare Strike. I feel like we have another Torracat that does some pretty crazy stuff. I thought that was this one. Where is it? This guy, Gritty Claws. 40 damage during your opponent's next turn. If this has full HP and would-be knockout, go down to 10. I want to pick his brain. Why I didn't go for that one. There's probably a reason. Probably. But yeah, the main one you're going to be using though is Litten, who's got Reprisal. It's going to do 20 damage for every damage counter on this Pokemon. So you could be using something like Magma Basin, damaging it while getting energy out onto it, and then going into Incineroar and just doing really big numbers for potentially 1 energy. Also, if you tank a hit, then you kind of just dish all that damage back to your opponent. Having Luxurious Cape in here means you could get up to 270 HP on Incineroar, so technically the biggest number you could be doing, let's say you took 260 damage, yeah, you could double that. You could do, what, 520? Not bad for 1 energy. Seeing the Arboru showing up in here just as a way to kind of manipulate your energy in play. Fire Off lets you move fire energy from your bench up to your active Pokemon. Great option to have into control decks where they're trying to lock something in the active and just going like, oh, you don't have energy to attack. And it's like Armarouge just moves it up and it's like, no, I do now. So game plan for that matchup, I feel like, is try and just get 2 Armarouge in play and you're just cycling energy into themselves. And then the Chandelure line showing up in here. This is a card I genuinely can say I did not know existed. Alluring Light makes it so once per turn, you can make each player draw a card. Mind Ruler is going to do 30 damage for every card in your opponent's hand. So you're kind of getting card advantage. You're helping your opponent out a little bit. But while you're helping them out, it's like, well, I'm going to hit you harder. If they have, what, 6 cards in hand, you could be doing 180 damage for 1 fire energy. Not bad. The rest of the deck, it's for the most part standard staples. We're seeing Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, combos amazingly with Dodrio and Chandelure, just guaranteeing yourself a good top deck with Cypher Maniac and then immediately drawing into it with Chandelure or Dodrio. Judge for some disruption and draw power, Arven just for setup, Boss for gust, Research for straight draw, Kindler being a little bit different. You can use this card only if you discard a fire energy from your hand, so it gets your Magma Basin online, which is good. Then you're going to look at the top 7 cards of your deck and put 2 of them into your hand. So sort of like Colress, but seeing 2 more cards, but you're not lost zoning anything, but you do need to discard a fire energy. There's a lot of buts in there. Interesting though. Like I don't hate it. It's pretty cool. Like, it can just help you dig through your deck for some key pieces. When you're trying to hold on to things like Rare Candy, you've already got Chandelure in your hand, or maybe you've already got Rare Candy in your hand. You're just looking for the other piece. Having this, you just be like, I want to look at the next 7 cards. I don't want to have to discard my hand to hope to find the other pieces. Yeah, it's neat. I definitely like that concept. So yeah, very cool concept, Crab, and congrats on making it to the top 4. In third, we've got Tristram, who's running a Hisuian Arcanine Frostlass concept. We've seen this float around a bit as well. So Arcanine has the attack Proud Fangs. It does 30 base damage, then 90 more damage if any of your bench Pokemon have damage counters on them. So having something like Frostlass that between turns will put a damage counter on all of your Pokemon that have abilities, yours and your opponent's, means you're damaging your Munkidorys, you're damaging your Bibberls, you're theoretically damaging Blocklax that's in here. And then Arcanine could just attack for free for a big number. Frostlass doing those chip damage does kind of help fix up some numbers for you, and Munkidori taking damage, having Dark Energy in here, chucking it on there, handing those counters off to your opponent also helps fix up numbers for your Arcanine. Bibberl for draw power, Cleffa for early game draw power and free retreat, and then Blocklax, I guess, to kind of like buy a bit of time in the early game or in the late game if you've seen your opponents used up all their switch cards or gone a little aggressive with their drawing. You can kind of just chuck this in the active as a Hail Mary play, or just to buy yourself a bit of time while you get back into another Arcanine. Like if you don't have any recovery cards and it's like, I just need to like find my super rods, get them back into the deck, get set up again. Yeah, fair enough. Emolga also showing up, just a little bit of spread damage. So combining this with Frostlass and Munkidori can be pretty aggressive. So I like that. And then, yeah, if you've got questions about the rest of the list, feel free to ask in the comments down below, but for the most part, I feel like they're pretty straightforward here. Evolution TM to get your stage 1 set up, Devolution TM so if Frostlass has set up counters into something that you can devolve it and take a bunch of knockouts. Yeah, solid play. Second place, we are seeing Oscar, who ran a Stall Snorlax deck. So Blocklax, when it's in the active, your opponent's active Pokemon can't retreat, so you're trying to just lock it in the active spot. And then having Bouffalant in here with Curlywall, when if you have 2 of these in play, it makes it so your colorless Pokemon takes 60 less damage from attacks, effectively bringing Snorlax up to 210 HP if you're trying to one-shot it, and then just scaling up from there if you have to multi-shot it, right? Like if you're trying to 2 or 3-shot this, it's taking 60 less every single time. So yeah, a little bit intimidating. Lots of just the standard stall stuff in here. So we're seeing Misfortune Sisters, look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, get rid of any items you find there, can get rid of their rare candies, their switch cards, make them have a bad time. Erica's Invitation, look at their hand, grab a basic Pokemon you find there, bring it into the active. So ideally getting something that can't attack, like if your opponent has a Manaphy to help out against spread decks, it likely can't attack in their deck. Blocklax in the active, now it can't retreat because you just brought it out with Erica. Yeah, a little annoying. If they're trying to buy time by just drawing into a large hand size, you do have Xyrosic's Machinition, so your opponent might be trying to build up a hand size, then use something like Judge or Iono to put it back into their deck while they're just trying to buy time and get set up. Xyrosic's going to punish them for that. Silene, just for some very aggressive looping, having 2 copies in here too. A little bit nutty. Does mean that you could be using Pal Pad, or you could use Silene. It goes into the discard pile. Pal Pad puts Silene back into the deck. Then you get into Silene. Silene can put Pal Pad back into the deck and ideally have a bit of an infinite loop. You do flip 2 coins with Silene though, so there is a potential that you just like whiff getting into it, but interesting concept. We aren't seeing any of Team Yell's Cheer in here, so it's not like they have multiple ways to recover supporter cards. They could just include that as well, and it's kind of like an additional copy of Pal Pad, so kind of happy we didn't see that because it's already a very aggressive control list in here. Penny, so that if their Snorlax are taking some hits, they can just scoop them and loop them. Boss, just for some aggressive gust. Arven, standard Arven stuff. Charon's effectively being 2 extra copies of Penny, just picking up a colorless Pokemon, popping it into your hand. Keeps any cards attached to it, so same as Penny. So you can be having things like Luxury Cape, Defiance Vest, Bravery Charm on them, scoop them up, put them back down, and still have those things then instantly attached back onto them. Counter Catcher showing up if they are ahead of you on prize or behind you. If you're behind them on prizes, you can gust up something for effectively free, right? You're using an item card. You can then use a supporter card, so you could like gust something up while still being able to use Penny. Accompanying Flute, look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, grab a basic Pokemon you find there, pop it onto the bench. So another way just to get out those things like Manaphy that can't attack, get them onto their board, boss them into the active or counter catch them into the active. Grabber showing up in here, so if they're trying to evolve into Pokemon, you can just make them put it on the bottom of their deck. Yeah. Blocklack showed up. And in first place, we are seeing Neji, who ran Dragapult. So Dragon Launcher, you get to discard any number of your bench Streepy. Then for each one that you choose to discard, you're going to do 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. You can't pick the same one multiple times, so it's kind of just like spear 3 different things, potentially doing 100 damage to each. Evolving from Dracloak, who has Recon Directive, you get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck, pop one into your hand, the other on the bottom of your deck for some solid draw power. Frostlass doing Frostlass things, comboing it with Munkidori just to kind of spread damage around, and then Dragapult can go pew pew pew, taking out some bigger things, right? Like Frostlass could be setting up damage counters into Bibarels. They go down, like if you have 2 of these in play, let's say you go Dragon Launcher, 100 damage to a Bibarel. Between turns, they're taking 2 damage counters from this Frostlass, they get knocked out. Yeah, it's some nice ways to fix up numbers. The Dunsparce showing up in here, having an ability, so it would be taking damage counters from Frostlass, but the ability lets you bounce it back into your deck and draw 3 cards. So you can kind of just have it sitting on your board and just eat it whenever you want to get into some cards. And also evolving from Dunsparce, who has Free Retreat, so it's just a great pivot Pokemon to be able to go into. Cleffa, another Free Retreater that can help you draw into a 7-card hand if you decide to go for the attack. And then yeah, this list, I feel like we've seen Dragapult in the top 8 quite a few times. You guys are likely familiar with it. Few different cards in here though. So we're seeing Clavel. Search your deck for 3 basic Pokemon with 120 HP or less. So just another way to get into your Munkidoris and your other basic Pokemon. So I can respect that. That's pretty cool. They kind of just like honed in on, I want to get my board set up very quickly and leaned into it. So respect it. Lost City, just a way to deal with a Manaphy once. You knock it out with damage counters off Munkidori, or just attack it in the active with Spooky Shot. Lost Idiot, it's not coming back, and then you just have free reign with Dragon Launcher. Canceling Clone, a way to just get Manaphy into the active, spritz it so that they're not protecting their bench, and then Dragon Launcher things off their bench, and theoretically the Manaphy in the active. So yeah, really, really cool concept. And then Devolution TM, just for those board wipe plays. So I hope you guys did like this breakdown of the top 8 decks in the budget build battle format this week. If you have any questions, always feel free to ask in the comments down below. And if you want to try out the tournament for yourself, we host it every Friday night in the Australian Central Time Zone. There'll be a link to the Limitless page. It will convert it to your time zone. So if you're not too sure about how that all works, just head on over there and you'll find out when it starts. We do also host a special North American event the first Friday of every month. And yeah, there's a first Friday of the month coming up next weekend. So if you're in North America and looking for something that works a little bit better for your schedule, that's probably the one for you. So definitely go sign up for that while you got the chance. And we have started doing seasons for this. So we're about 4 weeks into the first season. There's going to be 12 weeks overall. If you get the top 8 of the points across the whole season, you're going to participate in another tournament at the end of it just for the top 8 players with the potential to win a custom-made playmat for the format. So good luck, guys, and hope to see you cooking up some crazy decks for the format. Till next time, though, stay golden, you Goombas.